all of those cases in many, many hospitals across the country have been completely dropped. And so physicians that are paid per case, or billing hours, the financial aspect is fascinating. It's affecting us in big, we don't know what the ramifications will be, because if your schedule has been cleared and you're not working, what is that going to look like if you're paid based on, projected number of hours?
All right. Well, Lara, I'm on the phone here, or on the video today, with Lara McElderry. How do you pronounce that?
McElderry. Yeah.
McElderry. Okay, I'll get that right at some point.
No worries.
McElderry. Okay. So I'm on the phone with Lara McElderry, and Lara started in 2001 when she married a boy who was going to be a math teacher. And 19 years later, you find yourself married to a doctor, and you have a website and a coaching business called marriedtodoctors.com. Tell me, how did you get to this space? It sounds like an adventure.
Yeah, it was quite the adventure. So we've lived and trained, my husband has trained in Arkansas, Ohio, Wisconsin, New Mexico, and now we live in Missouri. And my husband is he's a general surgeon with a critical care trauma ICU fellowship. And it's just been a long road because, first of all, he didn't know for sure he wanted to be a physician. He thought he wanted to be a math teacher. And then he took the MCAT and decided to be a physician. And then he was going to be a surgeon. But then that was really stressful on our family for a number of reasons. One of which was we had young kids with some demanding needs. We had a son who had a brain tumor in medical school and had some needs those first few years of residency, which he's doing great now. But at that time in our lives, that was a super stressful added thing. I felt completely abandoned in a new city by myself. He was stressed, and he was like, you know what? I can be happy being a pathologist, so I'll do that instead. I was like, well, that's great. They may have much better hours. Hallelujah. You've finally seen the light. So then we moved back to our home state of Arkansas, and he began pathology, but he wasn't in it very long when he, as he would say, missed cutting people. That's his quote, and needed to get that itch scratched. So we ended up at that point trying to find a program, which was a little tricky for those of you in the medical profession and have gone through Match or finding programs. If you get off cycle, you're kind of a misfit, the island of misfit toys. And so we were very, very fortunate to get a position at an accredited place where he could go finish surgery, become a licensed physician. And we did all of that. And then he kind of took his dream job, but like 50% of physicians' first jobs don't work out. They're not the dream jobs you think they'll be, which was a big heartbreak. You can imagine as all this time has passed. We're talking years here. At this point, we were 7 years out of medical school. So it had been a long road. We were ready to settle down. And when he realized that we could have stayed that job, but he wasn't going to get to do the cases he wanted to do and that sort of thing. He decided to do a fellowship that took us to New Mexico. So all of this to say, one day I found myself in Albuquerque, New Mexico, living in an adobe home. I had no friends. My youngest was starting kindergarten. We still didn't have any money. Nothing had gone according to plan. And I thought, I cannot be the only physician spouse who feels like she has gotten ripped off, like sold a bill of goods. Like, I've given up at least 2 amazing teaching jobs. I have a degree in that. It's what I absolutely love to do. I had great principals and coworkers at different points. And I'm like, I just let all that go. I keep letting my retirement go. Any, thing that I could do, the kids have bebopped around. Their education's getting messed up. We're never going to have a 529 for our kids. I'm just like nothing's going according to plan. And I knew that there were a lot of other physician spouses that had made, it's hard to call it a sacrifice, but honestly, it really is sometimes. you give up certain things for the sake of your marriage, because your spouse is a physician. And so at that point I was like, I wanted to create like a positive and a safe place for myself, really, so that I could have others communicate with me, and I could communicate with them about what it was like and how can we support each other, and what techniques and what things work, and how can we stay, in a good mindset when we're dealing with the stresses of being married to a physician. And so I ended up starting the Married to Doctors podcast, and it's just been so much fun. I set a goal to do it for a year. After the first year, it was successful enough. I just finished year 2.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And it's been great. So that's a very, very long answer.
No, but that's kind of that path mirrors the clients that we work with at the Finity group, because we start working with these physicians when they are in this period of their life, their residency and fellow. And, it's the world, it's the messy middle, where there's so much going on, and it's not, in the glorious doctor thing that a lot of people really, envision.
Sure.
When they pick this up. And the same thing with the advisors. It's the people who's in there in the trenches, help you trying to get through these decisions and moving. And one of the things that we've tried to do is we have our advisors are licensed all over the country, because it's much easier if you find somebody who's good, who you can relate to and understands you and has been through the, New Mexico, Arkansas, Missouri,
Right.
and all the other, and the health decision, the family and the home and all that, that how do you find another financial advisor when you move back to Missouri? How do you train a new one? So what we've done is we move with them. So that's part of the relationship that we have with most of the clients. And I can tell you that as a woman being on the phone with some of these clients, and the spouses, I can sometimes hear things in their voices. They want to be part of this discussion. We need to include them in this discussion. Let's get their input in this discussion so that they can do that, and provide them resources that will be helpful to get through this period as well.
So important, because, I guess we need to acknowledge, we both are aware that about 50% of physicians are female, 50% are male. I have found that it's usually, and then of course there's lots of dual physician couples,
right.
But if one couple's a physician, or one partner's a physician and one is not, I have found it usually, not always, often will fall to the non-physician spouse to be included on a lot of those plans, because they're the ones that maybe have the time to do it. And they're the ones that kind of have to carry the plan out, either transfer the money or make sure taxes are done a certain way, whatever it is, or just really the day-to-day expenses. So that falls a lot. Yeah.
It's even scheduling the appointment.
Oh, yes.
Because that's one of the things that I know.
We have to schedule their doctor's appointments, their doctors, or they don't ever go,
Absolutely. So most of the people who come to your site are women.
Yes, the majority of my listeners are women, probably because I'm a female, so I speak from that perspective that I have and that I own. But of course, I welcome men, and I do have men as well. But my audience tends to be more women.
More women, yeah, and that's and it's the same thing. I typically work with women, and I have a few male doctors and male veterinarians, but I do feel the most enjoyable from my standpoint is because of the way I think that women work with women. it's a little bit more collaboratively. So I enjoy that. Now, when I first contacted you was because I saw your post on, you did a post or a podcast on divorce, and you interviewed a doctor about divorce. And I was working on a project where I was trying to find out where, because all the articles I've seen and all the work I've seen, it's always from the male perspective. So I've seen lawyers going through divorce, but I'd never seen female lawyers going through a divorce.
Oh.
I couldn't find any articles or anything. And I've seen, and I was looking and I'm like, well, I wonder about female physicians. Is that it? And then I came on your site and it was like, oh, maybe this will be it. And it wasn't.
Nope, that's one of the ones where it happened to be a male, you know. Out of, 150 episodes, there's about 6 to 10 that are males, and you found one of them. Yeah, that's funny.
But that's one of the things too, is that when it is a tough situation for a female to go through, and it's hard enough for some females in some of these positions that they are, there's not very many female surgeons, I noticed. And there's a certain type of mentality that has for individuals who work in those
or at least certain stereotypes, for darn sure, right?
Yeah, for darn sure.
I will say, my husband's partner is a female, and I'm so glad. She's awesome.
Oh, is she?
She's
that's great.
Yeah, she's incredible. So I'm really glad for that. Yeah,
that is great. I noticed that because I've had both of my shoulders replaced, and I noticed that all the doctors, the lead doctors, were male, and all their assistants, or I guess their PAs. Physician assistant, they're all PAs. Females, So I thought that was really interesting.
No, in this case, she's his equal.
Is she?
The equal partner. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, no, nothing under. She's every bit as much in the game as he is.
Congratulations to her.
Yeah.
But I do feel that women are, and maybe you can bear this out, you don't like to talk about things that are hard sometimes, or if it's not working out very well. And so who do you go to talk to? And that's one of the things that I've seen at your website is probably a good sounding board to also help those women get through some of these tough times. This. Is that what do you get?
Yeah, I think we're really trying to create a safe space. There are female physicians that listen to the show, as well as, as we've already mentioned, a lot of those just in a relationship with a physician. And I think it's so important to have that safe space, because what we find is that a lot of these problems come across as very entitled problems to certain populations. And it's not that we're insensitive, but it's that these are the real issues we're dealing with. So if you tell someone you have 6-figure student debt, for someone that maybe struggled in high school or feels it, you just have to, we needed a safe place. We needed a safe place that we could talk openly and without the judgment of the public and without all the stereotypes of the public, kind of in our face. And so that's really why I created the show, was so that we could talk about the problems that we have from medical school through retirement. I hear from women and men, they're like, oh my gosh, my spouse is cutting back on their hours, and this is the hardest period of our marriage. We're like, we're never gonna make it, because a lot of these like type A surgeons that are busy, use their brains, use their hands, always into something, and suddenly they're like, I've got time on my hands. What the frick am I supposed to do? It makes it a little complicated. So, definitely interesting.
It is perspective, and it's everybody likes to believe there's the glory in it, and the glory of being married to the doctor. But I got to tell you, this are, and probably the last 10, 15 years, it has been relatively, there's been pandemics and stuff like that, but I think right now we have the added piece that is coming in, and that's the elephant in the room is that, have you had more people now come and visit your website and seeking your help because of what's going on with the COVID-19 and equally the financial implications of what's happening?
Yeah, so absolutely. I have a Facebook group that I haven't, that's not really my main gig, but I have had people finding me there more recently. Definitely engaging on Instagram, engaging and listening to the podcast, and to past episodes as well. I think people are seeking out those resources. Interestingly, we've been talking a little bit about the need for this safe space. I think this COVID-19 and the fact that our physicians are on the front line of this war that we're battling with this invisible enemy, it's crazy. I think that for the first time, people are, maybe not the first time, but for a lot of people, they're kind of like, oh, maybe I'm glad you're not a doctor. Maybe I'm glad we don't have that problem. And of course, this is very specialty specific. So my husband is in critical care. And so, with the COVID patients, really, their best bet is really a pulmonologist, like that would be preferred. But after that, you're going to have your critical care docs, anyone that has ICU experience. Emergency room docs, of course, are being hit really hard because where do you first show up? You show up in the ED. And so they're constantly facing that. So those physicians are getting hit really hard. Other physicians that have like, let's say bariatric surgeons, maybe even allergists, a lot of things like, I don't know, maybe they cut moles off of you, but it's not going to it's not good for you and you need them to be removed, but you don't need them to be removed yesterday, And all of those cases in many, many hospitals across the country have been completely dropped. And so physicians that are paid per case, or billing hours, the financial aspect is fascinating. It's affecting us we don't know what the ramifications will be, because if your schedule has been cleared and you're not working, what is that going to look like if you're paid based on, projected number of hours?
Oh, wow.
Now you're not working those hours.
Oh, wow.
What happens to your salary? And here's the thing, is the hospital going to say, well, you'll go down to base. A lot of times you'll have a base pay. You can't really go below that. But up to 50% of your salary can come above the base based on the hours. So your salary very well may have just been chopped in half, or even worse, depending on how your contract's written.
Right.
And then you go, and what's the hospital supposed to do? They're not getting money. The COVID patients, we're going to treat them. We always treat everyone, even though, that's what hospitals do. If you're in a life or death, you can't breathe, you're going to get help if at all possible. So, I mean, I don't know. I think there's a lot going on. We're recording this. What's today? I've lost track of time. March 23rd.
Yeah.
By the time people hear this,
where are we going to be?
Sounds a little ridiculous, and we were all hyped up over nothing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Looking at Italy, there are physicians making what people are calling wartime medicine decisions, really, over who has the best chance of me. What skills do I have that can best help one of these people right now?
Wow.
And you can't run faster than you have strength. You can't help more people than you have resources for.
Right.
And it is really sad that they don't even have the personal protective equipment in many cases.
Right.
And so they're exposing themselves. In turn, they're exposing their families. And
it's literally, it is.
It's like wartime medicine. You're like, oh my gosh.
Medicine. So are you doing things to try to get word out there that you're here for, or your group is here for
Yeah. So
each other?
I have my regular weekly podcast called Married to
Mm-hmm.
Doctors. I
Mm-hmm.
also have a Facebook group called Married to Doctors subscribers that people are welcome to join.
Okay.
My Instagram account is also Married to Doctors. Now,
Okay.
exciting news. In addition to all of that, I wanted to create more help. I work as a life coach with physicians, and if there is one time when I could maybe help them and their
Mm-hmm.
families, this is it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm really happy to say that I've launched a new podcast called Positivity When Social Distancing. It just
Okay.
got approved by Apple today.
Oh,
So
very
it's
good.
called, Positivity When Social Distancing. It's short, 5 to 10 minutes
Mm-hmm.
of life coaching tips, really for those with loved ones in healthcare and parents. So it is definitely focused more towards them, but of course anyone can listen and see if they find it useful. It's a bring a notebook and a pen kind of podcast where I'm going to just be giving you some exercises and ideas as they kind of come to me, as I see kind of what the community's asking for.
Uh-huh.
And it's hopefully a very short-lived temporary podcast. But I felt the need for it and wanted to give more
Mm-hmm.
in that way. And so I thought that would be the best format for me to use.
Oh, that sounds cool.
So,
We'll have to get
yeah,
that information so we can definitely
yeah,
post that together as well. And you also are doing coaching.
yeah,
So tell me a little bit about that, because that seems to be an area that is also, I see women asking for that. I see that a lot of female professionals
mm-hmm,
asking for coaching or guidance, or
yeah,
that I want to bring my authentic self to work. I want to bring and I feel that I need to have somebody who can help guide me through this world.
yeah. Sometimes you need a cheerleader. Sometimes you need someone to be there for you. And it's not necessarily mental health as much as it is mindset, overcoming doubts,
Mhm.
working through hard things. The sentences you tell yourself about yourself, the mean girl voice in your head.
Yeah.
It's about all of those things. And so um, I love doing coaching. Right now, with everything going on, I am doing free 20-minute calls for anyone that just needs someone to be with them and
Mhm.
listen and get it with them.
Mhm.
Um, and then I have coaching packages as well, which I have priced and have options available for those that are financially struggling too. So
Mhm.
it's something that I love. It actually grew out of the podcast. I didn't start out, hey, I'm a life coach, so I'm going to make a podcast so you'll coach me. It started out, hey, I'm this crazy lady doctor wife. Let me work through my issues. And then
Mhm.
eventually over time, developing the rapport with the listeners and them saying, you know what, I want to ask you the question, not the person that you had on your show.
Right,
So
right, right, right.
it's been a lot of fun to see come together.
And likewise, at where I see is this is definitely, have you worked with a financial advisor, or have you ever had, how is, because in my world, only there's very few female financial advisors. Most of them are the
Yeah.
male financial advisor on that. So,
Yeah.
again, I do want, if people feel that that's where they want to be, or they feel that they want to have those conversations, that, they can have a choice
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
working
There
with
are a
that.
few good females out there doing the work. So sometimes that's what we're looking for. I think we're all looking for good, solid advice. And on the surface, we don't really care about your gender. But then on a deeper level, there are certain ways that you can open up with a financial advisor if you feel more comfortable with that person. And so for
Absolutely.
those that do prefer a certain gender, it's nice to know that there's a few ladies in that field. Because finances are personal, they
They
really show
are.
your value system. And I think
Mhm.
it's important that people, that people make good financial decisions. Obviously, when we're facing something like COVID, we're all like, well, holy crap, I'm glad we had a little bit of cash on hand, or I'm glad, Josh and I just paid off a student loan and I'm kicking myself. I'm like, "Arr." We just,
Oh yeah.
yeah, because we had been building up some savings and let's get rid of this one. It's got the highest interest rate. We're like, that felt good. Now I'm like, I kind of wish we just had that cash in the bank, but
Yeah.
we do the best we can. We only know what we know when we know it. So.
Yep. There's, that's, what do you do? What do you do?
I know.
But you laugh about it, you hope.
Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do? I'd call him up and say, hey, since he doesn't have the right face mask, I think you should at least throw us back that bone.
Can we get that one back for us?
Right.
Oh, yes. Yeah, there is, well, I'm glad that they are doing that for those doctors that still have the student loans, because, yeah, that's a tough hurdle to face, while you're doing all this stuff and, studying and all that. And I do know that finances, that's one of the stresses that do come up with the households. So I did see on your podcast, there are a few discussions about finances.
And finances affect relationships. So even though I'm primarily a relationship coach or relationship type based podcast, if we didn't talk about money, it would be one of the elephants in the room. I mean, it causes a lot of marital strife. For various reasons. And so we try to address that from time to time. I think it's imperative that we do.
Well, yes. And I same thing is I believe a lot in the emotional aspect of financials. And, when you can hear in somebody's voice that there's something they're unclear on, or there's something that I had one conversation, I remember having the conversation with a doctor's wife and hearing it in her voice, and they said, there's something there. And a couple of phone calls later, I was on the phone with just the spouse, and it was that they had decided it was time for them to split. And after seeing, when I saw your stuff, I was like, oh, that would have been a great resource for that particular spouse. It would have been very, very helpful. Especially since there was an issue with childbirth and PTSD, which happens also when you have those challenges in child rearing and children being sick and things like that. Just throw a little oil on that fire, Yeah.
What else can we add to and that's what I feel like. Physicians have, in some ways, really, I think, been taken advantage of for quite a while, as far as, well, they'll be there when we show up and we can overwork them, underpay them, they've got to earn their right to be here. And, people are kind of getting tired of it. We're like, because we see our peers making as much or more money, working fewer hours. And we're like, well, we had decent enough brains on our shoulders. Why did we choose medicine? And sadly, my husband, I always say when I'm talking about this, some people see medicine as a job. Some people see medicine as a career, and some people see it as a calling. I'm fortunate that my husband sees it as a calling because it's a little more, it's easier to accept kind of the crap that comes along with it.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, COVID-19 is pushing us all to the brink, because it's like, it's just got real. And, what are you really asking them to do? And at what cost? At the cost of their lives, at the cost of their families' lives, for the love of Pete, get the people the right equipment, get us testing sooner. There's a lot of frustrations in the medical community right now, and there's legislation being tossed around, and let's talk about saving the big companies. And we're like, can that include hospitals and physicians?
Yep. And when this is all over,
who's advocating for us, right? We'll just be there. Oh, we're rich. Again, all those stereotypes. They're obviously wealthy. They've got an MD behind their name. We're like, look, people, we haven't been out of training that long. We've got debts. We've spent, our savings wasn't as big because it took us longer to get those letters behind the name.
Right.
It's a hard situation right now, but I will say it's not just physicians. everyone is feeling this. I don't care who you are. And I respect that. And I know that. And as a country, I think we're just all feeling it. Mm-hmm. And I do want to be respectful of that. But at the same time, I care about the docs. Like, that's my world.
Well,
like,
that's
the people that I coach. That's the people I know. And they're also, our peers and our friends. And so it's hitting really close to home.
And that's one of the things that when I've done with my practice is that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you, because when I'm working with somebody, people will say, well, just get a coach, and it's like, well, no, you know what? Get a coach who knows it was an expert at working with you. And, I see the same thing, as I said, I work with female professionals, and I do deal a lot with a lot of veterinarians. And that's a whole different cup of tea, the stresses that they have, because it is the same thing in terms of the money that people perceive they make and the cost.
And honestly, vets are worse off in so many cases, because education is as expensive, but the return in pay isn't
quite it.
Fantastic.
And the same pro-sal thing. But again, and having the resources to do that. So I make it my business that if there is somebody who is an attorney who works with doctors, who understands what doctors are from. I even I work with a realtor who works with doctors. She was worked for years in the administrative area of a hospital, and then hung that up and started doing real estate. And it's like, oh yeah, you want to talk about doctor's house, because I know what they're going to be looking for when they start. And then when we start talking about reality, this is where we're going to go. And so it is all about, when people need help, is getting those experts that are expert at doing, working with people like them. So I really appreciate your time today and appreciate finding out more about you. So how can people get a hold of you?
I would just refer people to my website, which is marriedtodoctors.com, or find the podcast Married to Doctors, or the new one, which again is Positivity When Social Distancing.
Okay, well, very good. Thank you. And I wish you the best of luck with your family. And I know I'm going to be talking to you again in the future. Anything that we can do with, to help you out, absolutely let us know. We want to make sure that your family is safe, because we definitely need to have you, your clients, your family out there right now, especially. So I really appreciate it.
We would love to hear your feedback and suggestions for future topics you'd like us to cover. You can get in touch with the show by emailing podcast@thefinitygroup.com, or by following Finity Group on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Finity Group LLC.
You can follow me on Twitter at Corey Janoff CFP, Instagram at Corey Janoff, or on LinkedIn under my name, Corey Janoff.
You can follow me on Twitter at Rochelle Finance, or on Instagram, Vanderzanden Rochelle, or on LinkedIn under my name, Rochelle Vanderzanden.
Check out all of the podcast episodes on the finitygroup.com/podcast, on our Finity Group YouTube channel, or your favorite podcast app. And don't forget to check out our financial clarity blog at thefinitygroup.com/blog.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Financial Clarity for Doctors by Finity Group LLC.